Hi, Bill.
Hello, Conn. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. As always, it's wonderful to be back.
Matt Lewis, my regular conservative comrade for the Week in Blog, is off this week. But Blogging Head's fan favorite, Conn Carroll from the Heritage Foundation, always willing to step up at the last minute. Kind
of sad, really, but yeah, whenever I get the email, "Are you available?" I generally I'll make the time.
So it is the aftermath of President Obama's first State of the Union. What is the conservative blogger take on this notable speech?
I think there are kind of two main impressions. I think, first of all, it's definitely roundly negative. I think what you see, kind of number one, is that there is no real policy change. There was no pivot, and number two is just the overall incoherence of it all. I thought Ross Douthat that really put it best. He said, "But if this is the pivot, if that's what the White House plan was, contingent on a healthcare victory, instead the legislation entered a weird political limbo and taken Obama's presidency into limbo with it. That was the impression left by tonight's State of the Union, which struck me as the speech of a president who doesn't know what narrative he's selling." And that's really how it struck me. Is it was just kind of so discombobulated. It was an incoherent mess.
That seems to be an argument you can say about any State of the Union because they usually cover multiple issues. And I think often the out party or ideology says they're incoherent because they tend to be sort of laundry list-ish. But I think on the State of the Union scale, this had a narrative to the speech. The narrative was not necessarily the issue specifics. You do walk away not exactly knowing where the legislative agenda is going to go, but I don't know if you could get that from a speech. But there's a narrative about sort of Obama versus the Washington game.
Yes, and well, that is a theme that many on the right seized on. Especially, it was a common theme over at the Corner. I think their editors ended up with their official post State of the Union editorial called it "Narcissism too is a constant companion." And he talked about how
unlike those other humble presidents, George Bush and Ronald Reagan.
Well, in particular, everyone he was talking about the facebacks, not the faceback, the setbacks the nation had experienced, etc. And I think one corner commenter put it, what does that make the voters of Massachusetts, the redcoats, and that the narrative of Obama kind of versus everyone else was to the point that he was equating the nation's troubles with his own administration. And so it was like
But he wasn't talking about himself versus the voters, or himself versus obstructionist forces in Washington, in both parties.
Well, that would be how you would took it. I'm just telling you how.
That's not an interpretation. That's literally what he was saying.
Well, but when you then compare it to the adversity that the nation faced in the Civil War or the Revolutionary War or Pearl Harbor, etc. That's more of the nation as an entirety facing adversity, as opposed to just Barack Obama and his agenda versus reality.
Well, obviously his argument is that it's not his personal pet agenda, that there are major problems that the nation needs to work on, and what he was elected to work on. It's not like he just whipped it out, suckers, here's what I'm really going to do. It's all stuff that he ran on.
Right. No, I think there was a question going in, what kind of Obama are we going to get? Are we going to get some acknowledgement, some real acknowledgement of errors that were made? And I think he had to, maybe one or two throwaway lines of how he could have, communicated better. But other than that, there was no real sense of remorse or rethinking of his strategy or his policies.
And so he does not have remorse or rethinking of
Right. So I think that's the takeaway. Is how is the White House going to react to Massachusetts? And apparently it's going to be some window dressing, some Clintonian child tax credits here and small business loans there. But other than that, on the big issues of the day, full steam ahead.
Well, I think there's some concern, on the left that's not true. I think that the message that Obama wanted to convey was that it was going to be full steam ahead. You did have this very significant development on the left, very blog-driven, 2 days prior to the speech, where the president, in a sense, quietly announced that he was going to have a 3-year spending freeze as part of the speech. Apparently, there was some White House call with quote-unquote progressive writers, at least according to Matt Iglesias' blog, where this was one of the initial forums where it was announced.
It did seem that Matt was breaking news there.
Right. I haven't seen that conveyed anywhere else. So I don't know exactly who else was on that particular conference call. But it indicates that it was designed to get the liberal blogosphere at peak outrage before the speech, and it wasn't just individual general purpose bloggers like Jane Hampshire or Marcos who were critical of it. You also had many economist bloggers like Paul Krugman, like Brad DeLong. I mean, DeLong is not someone who... I mean, Krugman's been kind of a thorn on Obama's side for a while. DeLong has generally been more favorable towards him. But sort of the range of progressive economists were very critical. Mark Thoma, I know you love Mark Thoma, saying this is repeating the mistakes of FDR in 1937 when you're pulling back your stimulus too fast and risking a double dip recession. But I assume politically what Obama wanted was to get that medicine to the left out of the way. He didn't necessarily want the story after the speech to be Obama pisses off left about spending freeze. He probably wanted the message to be more about jobs and about this issue with obstructionism in Washington and fighting against that tide. So he got the spending freeze flag out of the way, maybe even set the expectations bar lower among the left as far as what's going to constitute good speech. So when he came out with the keeping of comprehensive health care reform, comprehensive climate bill, long-term job strategy still in there, he got more plaudits from the left than you might have otherwise have had.
Yeah, the run-up was interesting. With the spending freeze, many on the right were kind of momentarily caught in the headlights as, do we number one, call this out as a fake spending freeze, or do we number two take this, as an admission that Obama is admitting that he spends too much and run with that. So I think we tried to run with it here at Heritage. Our headline that morning was President Obama is right. We have a spending problem, and so we outlined the fact of how much discretionary spending has gone up, especially just in the last year under Obama, but then also saying it's great that he's also admitting that that too much spending is the source of all these deficits. So there was definitely...
I don't think that's exactly what Obama was trying to say. That might be what Heritage Foundation would like people to say. I think Obama's
it's definitely part of his message to independence, isn't it?
You still there?
Yeah, I am. I said it's definitely part of his message to independence, right? I mean, that's the whole point of it, right? Is to be signaling to independence
to feel like while we are pursuing these very difficult problems to solve, like healthcare, like jobs, like climate, probably only in the case of jobs does it require, deficit spending. Healthcare reform is part of the deficit message, that you need healthcare reform to reduce the deficit. CBO scored the House cap and trade bill saying that would reduce the deficit. But obviously there's a sense in independent land that these things are costly items, because there's messages coming from some sorts of institutions from somewhere in the country, I don't know exactly where, putting out that kind of argumentation. But he wants to send the message that we can pursue these things and have a long-term strategy to keep us fiscally sound and keep those independents from bolting like they did in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I think when somebody says that they're going to stop drinking, it's because they're admitting that they're drinking too much. And that's exactly what the message of having them call it a spending freeze. That's why they rolled it out to the New York Times and Washington Post a couple days early, is that so they could get those headlines of, Obama, sober government in charge, spending freeze. So that was definitely the purpose. And, it's perfectly normal and advantageous of conservative bloggers and the right to say, look, Obama's admitting he's spending too much. And that's definitely a token we'll take for our caps.
I am spending too much. I have personally thrown too much money out the door. These are all programs that have been in existence in many cases, for a long time that need to be reformed. The guy's only been in office for 12 months. He didn't create, half of the government out of whole cloth. But from his perspective, for most people's perspective, there is a long-term fiscal issue. There's great debate over what that issue actually is. There are people on the left that I think would disagree with how Obama characterized it. Obama would disagree with how many people on the right would characterize it. You have some economists like James Galbraith who had a blog post at the National Journal site saying, look, you actually don't have to worry about the deficit long term at all right now, because the only thing you would have to worry about with long-term debt is inflation. We're nowhere near having an inflationary problem right now, so it's not even a serious concern. So there's lots of debate about the basic substance of it. But I don't think Obama is at all saying, I personally have thrown too much money out the door and I'm sorry about that and I'll stop now. It's not what he's saying.
Yeah, it's a complicated message, and it'll be interesting to see if he pulls it off. I mean, as Eric Erickson had another post at Red State, raising what he called a statement on Barack Obama's statement on taxes raises a valid question. And I know some of the lefty blogs that you sent me in reaction kind of raise the same issue from the other angle. But, Eric writes, but most of the tax cuts were temporary tax cuts, and a lot of what Barack Obama calls tax cuts were actually payments to people who do not pay taxes. But let's take him at his word. However hard it may be to do that, if cutting taxes helped get our economy growing again, why does he want to let the Bush tax cuts expire? And it just goes to show, again, the kind of tough argument he has to make is that he's got the spending and taxation exactly right, and that at the same time that he's got all this economic recovery trying to go, he's also going to try to make the argument that we need to allow the Bush tax cuts to expire. And if all this tax cutting that he was talking about in his speech was so great, then why is he letting the Bush rates go?
Well, I mean, it's a hard argument to make because the economy and the budget are more complicated issues than often what Eric Erickson and other conservatives like to characterize it as. The whole argument, the general Keynesian argument, is that yes, there is a time and place for tax cuts. Tax cuts geared towards the middle class and the poor certainly make sense in recessionary times, and it's what Obama did. And what Bush did in 2000. I mean, part of the reason why Democrats went along was that they tried to make them not permanent tax cuts, even though they went for 10 years, and Bush was constantly agitating to make them permanent. And I certainly don't, pat Democrats on the back for supporting him, but I think one of the reasons that they rationalized it was, yes, these do make sense for right now in the midst of a recession. They don't make sense once the recession is over. And that's why you would let the Bush tax expire, because this recession is not going to last forever. And when we do get out of it, you do need to have revenue if you want to have a government that provides the services and solves the problems that the people ask it to do. It would be nice if conservatives would at least take that argument on directly and not constantly oversimplify the issue.
No, I think they definitely do all the time. I think you mischaracterized Keynes when you talk about Keynes said we need to target tax cuts to the poor. Keynes was much more ambivalent about whether you go to deficit spending through taxes or spending, and he definitely didn't say it needed to be targeted to any certain population. It's just a very cut and dry formula that he had that conservatives think is entirely simplistic. But we'll see whether or not the independent voters are able to buy Obama's taxing and spending.
Well, there was a Democracy Corps poll of swing voters that showed that swing voters were highly impressed with the speech, not just in the some skepticism whether there will be the follow through, but high marks for Obama on those issues, and particularly with his posture towards Wall Street. So. There is some evidence that the messages were working, But I think often with State of the Unions, it's one day. People want to see results, see the follow-through. And my guess is, if we can veer off of the Week in Blog and get to our own knee-jerk punditry, people are going to judge about more on overall economy and jobs than they are about the deficit levels. That tends to be the way politics goes. I imagine 2010 and 2012 will be no different.
Probably. But sticking back to the State of the Union, let's talk about healthcare.
Yes. Well, two separate thoughts I've seen on from top liberal healthcare bloggers. You had Jonathan Cohn of the New Republic saying, I think everyone would acknowledge that Obama kept healthcare as a top priority in the speech, but did not say anything concrete that would reconcile the gap that remains between the House and the Senate bills.
What was the Think Progress headline? If you wanted to see Obama talk about healthcare, don't blink because you might have missed it.
Right. So was that Think Progress or Wonk Room? I thought it was Wonk Room.
Cap Action Fund. Who cares what branded product it was?
It's a Center for American Progress blog product. But Igor Volsky, I believe, at Wonk Room was critical that it had not a lot of time given to the issue. It seemed like it was downplaying, risking losing momentum to solve the problem, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Jonathan Cohn, who has the healthcare blog The Treatment at the New Republic site, was much more positive, saying he kept comprehensive reform as the top priority. He didn't give any credence to downscaling the bill, and that the private conversations he had with congressional healthcare advocates, that they felt very good about the political cover Obama was giving them, although they then said we do need the president to step in and help hash out these specific, nagging sticking points. There was a article in The Hill last year where they were talking about the fact that Obama and Congress are trying to juggle all of these big, giant priorities all at once, and how's that going to work? And there was an anonymous person cited, I think out of the Speaker's office, that said that part of the game plan was take one big issue as far as you could take it. You will eventually hit a wall. Because any reform effort is going to have bumps in the road, and when you hit the wall on one, then shift your attention to another. So that may be what's going on here. That healthcare hit its wall, shift to jobs, shift to Wall Street, lower the temperature on healthcare, and then try to hash that out more quietly, and not where every little suggested compromise gets shoved into the media blog Cuisinart and ripped to shreds. If that's what's going on. Perhaps Obama's strategy is a way to lower the temperature and allow this to get hashed out in a more quiet fashion, but we'll see.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Ezra Klein here. I don't think they're. I think the White House looks confused and uncertain because they are confused and uncertain. As James Capretta wrote at the corner, they're all talk and no action because there is no plan. They don't have a plan to pass health care now, and I think the speech last night just underscored that. You have Landrieu coming out today saying that healthcare is on life support, and Mark Pryor says it's probably a stalemate. You can't solve it this year. And the stuff I read at Talking Points memo, who I think is a great source in the healthcare debate to figuring out where the Democrats are. They're talking about how the House having an upper hand in negotiations now, and I saw reported in the Hill that they sent the Senate a list of demands, and one of them is that the bill rise in cost by $300 billion. And I'm like, these House members are just delusional. The only way this health care bill is going to get done is if they salute and pass the Senate bill. The Senate is not going to do anything on this.
Well, I think that's quite right. They were already talking about compromises. There were House Senate compromises that were in the pipeline.
That was all Brown. That was all pre-Brown.
Well, right. But my point is that what they're trying to do is salvage those compromises, and there are some things that hadn't been fully resolved yet, and get those passed separately in a secondary budget reconciliation. So
you think this is a plausible scenario?
Of course it is.
You think that the Senate will take up on their own a new health care bill, pass it through reconciliation, and then have the House go next?
They would pass the Senate bill as is first.
No, that's not my understanding of what Nancy and Clyburn and all the House members want.
No. What Pelosi just said this week was yes. I mean, the whole two-step strategy is you got to take the current Senate bill, pass it as is on the president's desk, followed by modifications that would go through budget reconciliation.
Yeah, but I mean, if the progressive members and all the rest of the House members who don't like the Cadillac tax plan, if they're going to trust the Senate to do that, God bless their naive little souls.
Well, I mean, this is why it's not done yet.
Right, that's why I'm saying the only real, and it's not that realistic, the only way this ever happens is if the Senate goes first. And the Senate ain't going anywhere.
Well, the Senate might go first on the reconciliation part of it. You know, I don't know how that's going to go down.
Not going to happen. The only way this bill becomes law is if Nancy swallows hard and passes the Senate bill as is. That's the only way this happens.
I am not in a position to say what is the only way anything's going to happen. All I know is there are people talking about different ways. That's one of the ways. It's still on the table, and we don't exactly know where it's going to go. And to the point that conservative bloggers are making, of course there's not a plan. If there was a plan, it would be done. We wouldn't be talking about this. They're trying to figure out exactly what to do because not everybody agrees. Governing is hard, which I think was part of the message from Obama's speech.
Fair enough. I mean, I think before the Brown election, I always thought it was a done deal that healthcare was going to get done, and everything I saw on the left was kind of realistic as to how it was going to happen. And I think you still do see like Andrew Sullivan and Matthew Iglesias saying kind of more just pass the Senate bill. I think that's at least realistic. But I think when you have, lefty bloggers dreaming up a scenario where the Senate is going to pass some reconciliation bill, and then the House is going to pass that, it's just complete fantasy. I mean, I guess that's the larger point is
it's not. I mean, it all depends on what's in the reconciliation bill. It's not the basic concept is not fantasy. I mean, obviously, if everyone's going to dig in their heels and want their super special perfect thing and not going to vote for anything short of that, then yeah, nothing's going to get done because everyone's got their own super special perfect thing. But
and that's why I don't think this is going to happen because
But the fact that House and Senate were already working on compromises tells me that it's not fantasy that you could do something like that. I mean, they did have a excise tax compromise.
I just think in order to get Obamacare over the goal line, you're going to need the full force of the progressive echo chamber on the same page, doing everything, which means Fire Dog Lake, which means Daily Kos, putting up numbers, burning up the boards
at this point,
to get the House
to
pass the bill. And,
that's a fantasy strategy.
Right. Well, this is my argument. Is that this is why, for the first time, I believe that healthcare is dead. Is because the Fire Dog Lakes and the Daily Koses and the left is not going to get behind the Senate bill and say to the House, "You got to pass this."
Is literally out there with a kill the Senate bill campaign. So. I think the White House, the mere fact they did the spending freeze move to provoke the liberal blogosphere is indication that they have recognized that they don't have a progressive echo chamber that they can, get to salute whenever they want. That's just not the way that the leading lights of the blogosphere, that the primetime hosts of MSNBC, that the liberal talk radio hosts that are still thriving despite the bankruptcy of Air America, because most of the liberal talk show radio shows are not on Air America. That's not how they're operating. That is not a practical strategy to go about this. Now, I think there is a base of Obama supporters who are not top bloggers, who are happy to salute for Obama when they feel it most of the time. So it's not like he has no base juice at all, but it's not blog driven at this point, so that's not how they can go about doing it.
Yeah, and I guess that's my point. Is that I don't see you getting the momentum to pass this bill without a strong gut check from the progressive base of the Democratic Party, and I just don't see them liking this bill enough to muster the will to do that.
The question is, to what extent do you need that part of the base to get the bill done? And I don't think we know that answer yet. Every Democratic administration since the 70s, has had great difficulty keeping all wings of its party together in trying to do significant reform initiatives. And both Carter and Clinton got dragged down by it to different degrees, and Obama's suffering from it right now. And it's an open question to what extent, to exactly how he navigates that.
Fair enough. I think we're done with State of the Union and healthcare.
But there were other State of the Union things to chat about. If I recall.
There was. I think a Supreme Court justice.
Yes. So I'm sure you were absolutely thrilled with the Citizens United ruling.
Yeah, thrilled. I think, yeah. I mean, it was a little anticlimactic because it was supposed to be released months ago, so it was kind of more like finally. But yeah, I was definitely happy with it.
Because I know I haven't heard enough corporate-funded campaign advertising in my life, so I'm very excited to what awaits me in November. But the president was less excited about it, and had a comment at the State of the Union that the ruling has now created a loophole because the way the law currently stands, a foreign national cannot give money to a candidate directly or to an independent expenditure. But if a corporation can give money to independent expenditures, there's now a loophole where a U.S. subsidiary of a foreign corporation can put money into campaigns. And so I think Obama made what was seemingly going to be, I thought, a bipartisan, everyone loves this, no muss, no fuss, knock this out of the park proposal to say, let's just pass a law to clear up this loophole that there's no way, no how foreign money can get into U.S. political campaigns. And then Alito decides to play the role of Representative Joe Wilson and shakes his head and says, not true, in the middle of the speech, which led two left-of-center bloggers, Glenn Greenwald at Salon and Jonathan Turley at his own site, both of them who, Glenn Greenwald is generally considered more liberal than Turley is, but both see themselves as diehard free speech advocates and have conflicted views of the ruling, I think generally in favor of, whereas I think in most part of liberal America there's just white-hot outrage at the ruling, but Greenwald and Turley have had qualified support for it. But both ripped Alito as completely breaching protocol, totally inappropriate for a judge to openly criticize the president. Obviously, whatever bill he's proposing could end up before the court, and so therefore it's professionally inappropriate for him to be making public comments like that. Are conservative bloggers agreeing that much, or are they cheering Alito as the justice that they always wanted on the bench in the first place?
Well, I'm a little confused. I think you have your facts wrong. I mean, first of all, to characterize these as public statements is a little harsh, considering that he didn't actually say anything. But more importantly, it was not that Samuel Alito was saying that's not true as far as coming out against President Obama's legislation. He was saying that's not true as far as President Obama's characterization of what the ruling actually did. Alito was saying Obama's got his law wrong.
There are many legal experts that would say Sam Alito was wrong right now.
Really?
Yes.
Which ones? Because both of the New York Times Supreme Court law reporters both said Obama was 100% wrong on this one.
No. Well, I saw those posts. Those were wrong.
Oh, really?
The ruling said, yes. What the ruling said was, we are not deciding whether foreign companies have a right to put money into campaigns. That's the constitutional question. Obama wasn't talking about that. The mere fact is, once you say corporations can give money to campaigns, because the law is unclear, because now nothing is now stated about it, that is why you have a loophole where there is nothing stopping, the U.S. subsidiary of Citgo, for example, to put money into a campaign where the money is indirectly coming from Hugo Chavez. There's no law on the books now that is preventing that from happening.
Yes, there is. 2 U.S.C. Section 441A, which prohibits all corporate political spending, strictly says that, is that foreign nationals cannot contribute to campaigns and cannot advertise. And that was not addressed by the case.
No corporation can directly give to candidates. Corporations can now give to independent expenditures. And as any conservative in the healthcare abortion debate would like to tell you, money is pretty fungible. So if Chavez gives money to the U.S. branch of Citgo, which he owns, and Citgo puts money into an independent expenditure ad, guess what? That indirectly came from Hugo Chavez.
Yeah, Obama's just wrong here. This loophole doesn't exist. The Tillman Act, which is the 1907 law that made it illegal for foreign nationals and associations to do this, was completely untouched by that. That ban is still there. This is just completely figment of the imagination.
The ban that a foreign national cannot directly do it is still there. But there is now an indirect loophole that exists. There's no way you're stopping the U.S. subsidiary of Citgo or Toyota or whatever from giving money to a campaign. There's nothing in the law that's stopping them from doing that.
Yeah, I don't think that loophole is there. I think that is still illegal under the law. There
are legal experts that disagree on this point. But that's why the situation is uncertain and murky. So it would be very simple to pass a law clarifying that cannot be done. And it's inappropriate for Sam Alito to be shaking his head saying, no, that's completely inappropriate.
Sam Alito wrote or signed on to a Supreme Court opinion stating what he thought the law was. President Barack Obama said something that contradicted that, and all Alito was saying was, that's not what I said. That's not what the ruling I signed on to said. I don't see anything wrong with that. He was not coming out against a law or for a law. He was just saying.
So conservative bloggers in general are standing with Alito on this question?
100%. There is absolutely anyone, nowhere.
There's no conservative blogger saying, you know what, let's just at least pass this law to make sure there's no uncertainty on this subject and foreign money can't be in U.S.
Not that I've read. I don't think you're going to either.
That is... So presuming there's going to be a bill on the floor to clarify this point, do you think that Republican congresspeople will actually vote against it?
It depends what it actually says. If they think it's completely superfluous, if they think it's completely unnecessary, then yeah, I would hope they would vote against it, because we don't need extra laws.
Than being damaging. If it's just sort of like a non-factor, why not vote yes and just be sure?
Because you don't want unnecessary laws on the book. Because you don't want prosecutors and lawyers and the rest of it having even more vague laws that they can use to gum up the works of the system. If it's already covered, if it's already illegal, you don't need another law.
This is going to be very fascinating to see if we start having concrete legislation on the floor of Congress that, in this case, going after foreign corporations, other Wall Street type things like the bank tax, like Consumer Financial Protection Agency, this Glass-Steagall 2 type legislation that might get to the floor. All of the conservative populism that has been percolating so far, and all the attacks on the Wall Street bailout, when the rubber hits the road and these bills are in front of Congress and Republicans start to flinch, it'll be very interesting to see what the political fallout is.
Yeah, I just don't think that this is the type of populist anger that the public really cares about. I was watching what was a Jon Stewart after the decision was talking about, all of a sudden I'm going to start seeing Toyota ads talking about, how terrible abortion is, which is completely silly. 99% of all corporations...
It is a comedy show.
Well, it just shows how silly the liberal argument and worry is. You're not going to see, the Toyotas and Frito-Lays all of a sudden weighing in on every issue. Companies want to seem as non-political as possible. What this ruling is really going to allow for is the Sierra Clubs of the world, is the issue advocates of the world.
They really need to be reined in, too. They've just been running roughshod over the American political system for far too long.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Citizens United frees the Sierra Clubs of the world to do more. The Sierra Club was fined $24,000 for a case in Florida for a mailer they put out. Citizens United frees them to do that more stuff. I'm for the Sierra Club having more speech. Those are the type of corporations you're going to see spend more money. You're not going to see
sitting on these billions of dollars for so long. Saying, why can't I spend this?
No, I don't think you're going to see a flood of money from corporations coming in to go directly to Congress. can you imagine what would be more awesome if you're Martha Coakley than to have AHIP or Pharma get on television and say, vote against Martha Coakley? She would love that.
It'd be independent expenditures
Anybody would love
done
that.
through front groups, or wouldn't it be obvious where the source money was coming from?
No, I mean, if your law was just that people had to disclose where it was coming from, that would be fine. And if it was just disclosure, conservatives are 100% in favor of disclosure. Let's definitely have disclosure.
There's disclosure and there's disclosure. There's one proposal on the table that corporations would actually have to do the "I'm the CEO of Aetna and I approve this message" at the end of the ad. That's some disclosure with teeth. That there's no mistaking where that money is coming from. If it's got to be on some database somewhere, people might not actually know what ad is linked to which corporation.
Yeah, I don't think the actual CEO has to get on it, but as long as it says, hey, Aetna paid for this ad somewhere in there, that was obvious. I think everyone in the free speech community, everyone in Heritage, everyone in the conservative movement would be fine with that. We have no problems with disclosure whatsoever.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if there is a disclosure-type bill on the floor and how conservative bloggers and other institutions are reacting.
That would get conservative support. Absolutely.
Well, outside of the State of the Union...
Yes. Now for some fun.
So I know liberal bloggers were tantalized by the arrest of James O'Keefe, the conservative provocateur, who caused a lot of waves with his undercover Acorn videos. It's heralded by Glenn Beck and Andrew Breitbart and others. Somehow it infiltrated Mary Landrieu's Senate office in New Orleans, posing with...
Infiltrated makes him sound like James Bond. I mean, come on here.
How would you characterize... You characterize the story better than me, I bet.
No, I mean, from the facts I heard, they showed up and passed themselves off as fake repairmen,
telephone repairmen,
and tried to get in the closet and tried to... They weren't even trying to tap it. Now it's clear they didn't even have any equipment to tap it. They were just trying to disable it. I mean, really, this sounds like a drunken college prank.
What was the point of doing this? What's the joke here?
Oh,
that was Ben Smith's point at Politico. Like, I don't even get this joke.
Well, John Hood, who when the story first broke, kind of had an explanation, and the facts are kind of supporting what his first guess was. And what his guess was is that O'Keefe was likely shooting footage for a piece making fun of Landrieu's claims of phone problems in the wake of public disaffection about Obamacare, not bugging the senators' phones. So they were just trying to go in there, trying to create a movie of saying, oh, Senator Landrieu says she listens to her constituents, but we shut her phones off for a whole day, and she lied to us and said that she, was listening to her constituents all day. But we know that's not true because, we disabled their phones and nothing was getting in. So something along those lines is what it appears they were trying to do.
Does that make sense to you? Are there other conservative bloggers saying, oh, now I get it, that's hilarious and I wish that worked?
No, I don't.
Or are there folks saying, I still don't get it?
Well, let me just tell the story this way. Is I got an email from a reporter friend of mine early in the afternoon on Tuesday. They're like, do you have John O'Keefe's phone number? And this is before anything. I was actually at the playground with my two kids. This is before anything had broken yet. And I emailed back. I was like, no, John O'Keefe's a weirdo. I don't have his contact information. I do have Mike Flynn's email. Here's Mike Flynn's email. And it wasn't until 2 hours later that he emailed me back and was like, hey, I just want to let you know that John O'Keefe was arrested trying to wiretap Landrieu's office. And I emailed back right away. I was like, that doesn't surprise me at all. I only met John O'Keefe once at a Christmas party, and he just came off as kind of like a weird, kind of hovering guy, and
Conn Carroll was at a Christmas party with James O'Keefe.
It's scandalous.
Arrested for infiltrating a senator's office.
But Hannah Giles was there too, and they're kind of cause célèbres among the conservative bloggers.
What kind of weird sexual love affair is going on between Conn Carroll and Hannah Giles and James O'Keefe?
So I was just trying to, because I was curious. I was like, what exactly does Breitbart have them doing? So I was trying to, ask them, what does he have you guys doing? Do you have, beats? Are you guys going to get press passes? And they were all just very kind of vague, boilerplate talking points. And it was very kind of off-putting. So, it was kind of like I don't really know what they're up to. And from their discussions, I don't trust them. And I don't think I was the only one who got that impression among.
So they were talking about this?
No, not specific. No, like I was pressing them, like more generally. This is like Christmas time, so I was like, you had this big hit, so I was just trying to like, so what?
Like what's your second
what's
act?
next? Like, what do you think in career-wise? Are you guys going to try to get press passes and you're going to report stuff on the Hill, or kind of like what do you got's going on? And just the response I got back was very. Vague and hazy, and made it seem like they really didn't, have much of a plan of what was going on. So
just like Barack Obama.
Your words, not mine.
So I know the first day there were a number of conservative bloggers that seemed to want to distance themselves from O'Keefe. I know Michelle Malkin in particular saying, hey kids, if you want to be citizen investigative journalists, don't be stupid and break the law.
Yeah.
Is that still the tone, or not really? This is just unplugging the phone. Why's everybody making such a big deal?
No, I mean everyone's definitely saying you don't break the law. I mean, especially a crime like vandalism. I mean, if there's one of the crimes that conservatives kind of have a pet peeve about. I mean, what's stupider than destruction of property for no good purpose? But John Hood had a good take. He said, journalist or filmmaker. He writes, in a post yesterday about the arrest of James O'Keefe, I angered a few NRO readers by writing that his previous Acorn videos, as well as whatever parody video he was trying to make in Senator Lander's office, did not constitute investigative journalism. I stand by this distinction, but my wording may have led some to believe I was dismissing the value of such work. I wasn't. I think parody videos and gotcha exposés and such can be very effective. Some of O'Keefe's past videos are quite funny, but the distinction is important. In his videos, O'Keefe often stages events and conflicts, sometimes to great effect, but I don't think we should call that investigative journalism. Andrew Breitbart calls O'Keefe an independent filmmaker, not an investigative journalist. I think that is an apt description. I've seen O'Keefe lavish praise on Michael Moore and aspire to be like him. We wouldn't call Moore an investigative journalist. So basically, he's just saying, he's not a journalist. He's more of a filmmaker. He's more like a Michael Moore figure. And, conservatives are going to have to make their peace with the James O'Keefes of the world the same way that the left has made their peace with Michael Moore.
I think that was a very thoughtful conservative blog post that you just read. So, now on the left, there's been some attention that when O'Keefe did the Acorn videos...
Yes.
Fox News went apoplectic and were running them nonstop as this was the biggest news story that ever hit America all of last year. And
it did have pimps in it though, and hookers, which will definitely drive traffic. I don't have to tell you that. You're a blogger. You know what drives traffic.
So Media Matters says, report after obsessive coverage of O'Keefe's video, Fox largely ignored his arrest, dedicating 4 minutes and 34 seconds to the story, with Fox's 3 top-rated programs not mentioning O'Keefe's arrest. So, does that say anything about Fox News' news judgment?
Yes, it says there's no sex involved in this story. There's no prostitutes. So there's no real story there. It's not a political scandal until there is sex involved.
That's the
criteria. But no, I also just thought it was so hilarious watching MSNBC go absolutely bonkers over the story. Sending David Schuster down to New Orleans, having Keith Olbermann spend a full half hour on it, bringing James Dean and the rest of it. Even Chuck Todd saying on the show that there's going to be a lot more of the story to follow, a lot more is going to come out. And ever since then, it's become kind of clear that, no, this is just, on a good day, a college prank gone bad. It's definitely embarrassing for all 4 involved. But don't get me wrong. I admire David Schuster for getting General Electric to pay for a vacation to New Orleans. So my hats are off to him. But watching him go through all these news updates there, and watching the story become obviously less and less of a story as he's down there, has been quite enjoyable.
But I assume, I know conservatives might disagree. I would say MSNBC is not as partisan ideological network as Fox necessarily have.
David Schuster definitely is.
I mean, Schuster, got even slapped down by the MSNBC chair for getting too personal with James O'Keefe on Twitter. I think that was a fair point that Schuster's boss made. But I'm assuming...
Oh, yeah, Schuster definitely believes that MSNBC is as hardcore left-wing as Fox is, and he's out to take it as far as he can.
My assumption here is that MSNBC is trying to find story. I mean, they definitely realize that they have a portion of their audience that are very liberal and like stories like this, and therefore they want to cater to that audience. And obviously, that's part of Fox's MO too. But I think it's a little bit different than trying to advance a specific agenda, because MSNBC will drive stories that are not helpful to Obama many times.
Not David Schuster. Not David Schuster.
Schuster takes his shots. I do think Schuster does feel he has a bit of a beat with antagonizing the conservative movement in Fox News, but I've certainly seen times where Schuster has not parroted the Obama administration line, or the Democratic Party line, whereas I think it's much more rare to see folks on Fox break ranks like that, although I did mention last week Lennon Beck did break ranks with Scott Brown, so not saying it never happens. But to prioritize Acorn, for example, which seems to be part of a sort of a larger strategy to take down the Obama administration, which I always thought was a stretch, I think says more about what their political aspirations are.
That's a good place to end it.
All right, sir. Always good to talk to you.
It was fun.
I dread our dinner in Washington.
Oh, well, that was kind of off camera, but I've been threatening. We bet on the Scott Brown race, and I'll go over here and embarrass Bill here. Not only did he say that Copley was going to win, he gave me 10 points. I had 10 points going in. So Bill owes me dinner, and I've been threatening to take him to Hooters just for extra torture.
Can people listening? I've never been to a Hooters. I'm only presuming that the food will be bad.
It's not true. They make a damn fine hamburger, and their wings are good.
Can folks on the comment thread say what is the quality of food at Hooters?
I'm not saying it's a 5-star restaurant. I'm saying they have
there
very
has
decent
to be
hamburgers.
A better burger. I know Ray's Hellburger is a better burger.
Look, we're not going for the food. I'm just saying the food's passable. We're not going for the food. I'm just saying the food's very passable.
Then why are we going?
For the view.
Always good to talk to you, Tom.
Always good, Phil. Check you later.
Take care.